Hi, students. Welcome back to another week of lectures and learning materials and everything else. So I hope you're doing well. Hope that you're staying healthy and staying safe. And I really look forward to reading your annotated bibliographies and seeing you start the process of research and summarizing research and analyzing research as you begin to work towards your short research essay. So, the first thing that I want to do is just remind you to go to your week 4. And if you scroll down here, you'll see that your final annotated bibliography already has a link ready for you to turn in. And just to remind you of a few key points, for full credit, you should have 6 sources, and 4 of those need to be peer reviewed. You must submit this as a Word document. I don't accept PDF or text edit or any other type of software. You need to have all of your citations in proper MLA format. And the summaries each need to be a minimum of 6 sentences. Now, if you have a longer article that requires a longer summary, that's fine. And I'll be looking at how many pages are in the article to kind of get an idea of what you really should be summarizing. But just make sure that they are at minimal 6 sentences. And then you can submit this up to 3 days late. But for each day that you are late for that submission, you're going to lose an entire letter grade. So for this example, you'll lose 10 points right off the bat. And I want to show you, if you go to your course reading materials and you open up to essay information, there's a rubric right here that shows you the breakdown of the points and where the points are going to be coming from. So I would encourage you to really reread that, take a look at it, and make sure that as you're finishing up some of those small edits and revisions, that you are considering all of these items as well. So what I want to do first is I want to go over the short research essay and just reiterate some of those ideas before we jump into our lecture. So here's the handout. And again, this is in your course reading materials and the essay guidelines. And if you go to the short research essay, just keep in mind it needs to be in proper MLA format. This needs to be 4 to 5 pages in length, and at least 3 character qualities need to be in the body paragraphs, but you are welcome to have more. The essay needs to be a full 4 pages. Your works cited does not count as one of those pages. Your works cited page needs to be included, and that should have at least 6 secondary sources, and 4 of those need to be peer reviewed. The great news is that as you're turning in your annotated bibliography, a lot of those citations have already been created for you, unless you've added some additional information up at this point. Correctly documented in-text citations. We're going to be talking about in-text citations next week. This week, we're really going to focus on how to build an essay and how to properly structure an essay. We're going to get more into the details of how to correctly cite research in an essay next week. Just some things to keep in mind. There are different ways to cite for direct quotes and paraphrases. And if your citation is longer than 4 lines, then you need to be using a block format. And again, we're going to break down what that looks like next week. And you may only use 1 or 2 block formatted quotes. This is not a long enough essay to use more than that. Correct grammar, mechanics, and collegiate level diction, and no first or second person language. We are academic writers, which means we must write in an unbiased, methodical way. Please do not use I, me, myself, my, you, your, or yours. Third person language only. Please review your lecture materials if you have any questions about what this entails. And again, this is something that we're going to break down even more next week. Please note that the due dates for this essay are on the course schedule and course information. Together, we will be working on your thesis, body paragraphs, transition, and summation sentences. The writing process is crucial to your success in this course. So, without further ado, I want to bring you to the lecture for this week. And let me get that pulled up. And the lecture this week is actually how to build a short research essay. And some of you may really have struggled with how to build an essay in the past, and you just really didn't know where to go after your outline. And so I'm hoping that, that this lecture will help with that. So the first thing that we need to discuss is what are the parts of a short research essay? So you have an introduction, you have your body paragraphs, your conclusion, and your works cited page. These paragraphs are set apart by what they entail, and they're indicated by an indentation that indicates you are starting a new paragraph. Please ensure you review MLA format to ensure that you know what those standards are. If you're looking at your paper and you cannot see the individual components, if you cannot look at the paper and go, here's my introduction, here's my body, here's my conclusion, there's my works cited page, there's a good chance that you're creating a disorganized essay or that you have a lack of cohesion going on. And then finally, keep in mind there should be no extra spaces between the paragraphs. With MLA format, the indentation to start your paragraph, that's what indicates that you're beginning a paragraph. So you don't need extra lines, you don't need extra spaces. You don't even need that between the headers and the title, or the title and the introduction. MLA format requires that you just keep all of that double spaced with no extra spaces. So first, let's talk about the introduction. There are several components to an introduction, and the very first thing that you're going to need is a hook. This is where you have an opportunity to really grab the reader's attention. You can do this by an insightful or an emotional story, a startling statistic, an open-ended or a meaningful question. But keep in mind, you do want to avoid second-person language. So you don't want to start off the essay by saying something like, do you know what creates a wonderful teacher in a classroom? We want to, first of all, we want to give a more meaningful hook and something that has a bit more depth to it. But secondly, we want to avoid speaking directly to the reader. Background information and relevance. During some portion of your introduction, you need to provide some background information on the topic. Give a sense of purpose as to why you're diving into this research. The background information should bridge the gap between the hook and your thesis statement. What we really call this is transitional sentences. What this does is it takes you from point A to point C. So it takes your hook and it considers your hook and it considers your topic, and it gives background information that leads to the purpose of why you're writing the essay. And it makes the introduction flow better. And then finally, and most importantly, your thesis statement. The thesis statement is the most important part of your introduction. This is where you will give the main purpose or the idea of the entire essay. You can also provide the main points that you plan to articulate, and they can act as a roadmap for your reader. So I want to show you an ineffective introduction example. Everyone uses math during their entire lives. Some people use math on the job as adults, and others use math when they are kids. The topic I've chosen to write about for this paper is how I use math in my life, both as a child and as an adult. I use math to balance my checkbook and to budget my monthly expenses as an adult. When I was a child, I used math to run a lemonade stand. I will be talking more about these things in my paper. So let's talk about why this introduction is ineffective and not a good example of a quality introduction. First of all, the opening line does not grab the reader's attention. And that's more of a blanket statement. Of course, everyone uses math. At some point throughout your day, whether you realize it or not, you're counting something, or you're taking a look at a price, or you're thinking about how much money you have in your bank account. That's just not a really attention grabbing, meaningful way to make the reader want to read your paper. The next thing is that I see often, and this happens in my 112 class, this happens in my 111 class, is that people announce that they're getting ready to write. Clearly, when you're writing a paper, you are writing a paper. So it's not necessary for you to say, this paper is going to be about, or I am going to write about. Of course, the reader knows that that's what you're doing. So you can avoid sentences such as, the topic I have chosen to write about is blank. And then finally, the sample introduction is lacking a clear thesis statement. The writer concludes with this very vague idea of, I will be talking more about these things in my paper. But this kind of statement should be more purposeful, where the writer talks about the topics that they're going to discuss or makes a very clear purpose and meaning as to why they chose to do the research. This is not a working thesis statement because it fails to make an argument or a claim about those topics. Essentially, what this has done is it's made a statement that everybody could agree with. A thesis statement for this essay would clearly tell the reader what things they would be talking about and the points that they're going to make about those particular subjects. So now let's compare with an effective introduction example. A penny saved is a penny earned. The well-known quote by Benjamin Franklin is an expression that I've never quite understood, because to me it seems that any penny, whether saved or spent, is still earned no matter what is done with it. My earliest memories of earning and spending money are when I was 10 years old, when I would sell Dixie cups of Too Sweet lemonade and bags of salty popcorn to the neighborhood kids. From an early age, I learned the importance of money management and the math skills involved. I learned that there were 4 quarters and a dollar, and if I bought non-food items like a handful of balloons, that I was going to need to come up with 6 cents for every dollar I spent. I knew that Kool-Aid packets were 25 cents, or that I could save money and get 5 of them for $1. Today, however, money management involves knowing more than which combinations of 10-cent, 5-cent, and 1 penny candies I can get for $1. Proper money management today involves knowing interest rates, balancing checkbooks, paying taxes, estimating my paycheck, and budgeting to make ends meet from month to month. So let's talk about why this is so much more effective. In the first line, we see that the writer uses a quote to really grab the reader's attention. A lot of people have heard this saying. They hear it and they reflect when they heard it or why they heard it. And so they automatically feel a sense of connection to the writer. The writer follows this attention grabber with specific examples of earning and spending money. Notice too how the reader makes the transition from their lessons in childhood to the real focus of her paper in this sentence. Today, however, we see those really good transitional words as she shifts to the purpose and meaning of this essay. The transition sentence effectively connects the opening narrative to the main point of the essay, her thesis. Proper money management today involves knowing interest rates, balancing checkbooks, paying taxes, estimating my paycheck, and budgeting to make ends meet from month to month. This thesis in particular gives exact topics that they're going to be discussing. So we can actually see in the thesis statement how these paragraphs are going to be laid out. In body paragraph 1, the writer is going to be talking about interest rates. In body paragraph 2, they're going to be talking about balancing checkbooks. In body paragraph 3, they're going to be talking about paying taxes. In 4, they're going to be talking about estimating their paycheck. And in 5, they're going to be talking about budgeting from month to month. So we see why these different components are so important, and we see the difference between something that's done really well and something that didn't give a whole lot of thought. Next, let's talk about body paragraphs. This is probably where I see students really struggle the most. They can come up with an introduction, they feel pretty confident about their thesis statements, but then they really struggle with the body of the paper. It's really important to remember that the body paragraphs should be making up the majority of your essay. And there's certain parts of a body paragraph that really have to be there in order to form a clean, well-rounded, well thought out paragraph. First of all, there needs to be a topic sentence. Each topic sentence should relate to your thesis statement. Think about the questions when determining those various points. What is the point of this paragraph, and what claim is being made? That first sentence in that body paragraph should be something that the reader looks at and directly correlates as to why your thesis statement is true. The next thing that you need is supportive research. This is the filling of your paragraph where you can put supporting evidence. This can be a quote, a paraphrase, a summary, or a combination. Your illustrations should support and help develop your points. In essence, they should help you prove the claim that you have made. Think about the following question when deciding on supporting examples. What specific data, experiences, or other factual materials support my topic sentence? This is where you're going to take all of that reading and all of the research that you've done for your annotated bibliography, and you're going to directly apply it to your short research essay. This is where I should see those supporting facts, supporting documentation, and expert research used. One of the things that students often neglect to include is the explanation component. This is the analysis, comparison, elaboration, and or evaluation of the topic sentence and the supporting examples, connecting the supportive research with the topic sentence. This is the most important part of your paragraph because it's where you develop your ideas. Think about the following questions as you develop this explanation. What does the provided information mean and why does it matter? This is where I really see the difference between A and C and A and B type papers. The student did a wonderful job including the topic sentence. They provided us with the topic that they were going to discuss. They provided us with research, but they failed to really analyze that research. They didn't connect why they included it. One of the things that you really have to consider as a writer is the reader cannot read your mind. If you're going to use research, you have to explain why you use that research. Why does it connect to the thesis? What does it bring to that topic that makes it unique? Why did you choose that particular piece? And then finally, the summative sentence. This is when you summarize the whole purpose of the paragraph, and it should reinforce the topic that you started with. Basically, this sentence is going to echo your topic sentence using different words, but it just reinforces what you're trying to convey, and it summarizes the paragraph holistically. So I don't want to show you an ineffective example of a body paragraph. I'd rather show you just an effective example and talk about the different key components that we just discussed in the previous slide. This is actually a body paragraph from a student who wrote the same prompt for the essay that you guys are getting ready to dive into. Learning to persuade a superior, jury, or judge skillfully is a significant quality of a lawyer. Having excellent persuasiveness can be the difference between a successful or unsuccessful lawyer, as they are often put in a position where they are forced to persuade others that the client is innocent or the defendant is guilty. Jude Daughtry interviewed Richard Posner, who served as a federal judge for 35 years. Posner explains that a modern lawyer has to be familiar with first-rate literature to write opinion briefs or even memos to superiors that will be literate, eloquent, and fully intelligible and persuasive. An opinion brief analyzes a court's opinion and is used to examine a case and its issues. This means that a lawyer must be persuasive as a speaker and a writer. Additionally, being persuasive not only helps in a career, but as a student too. Persuasiveness is the characteristic that allows the student to rise to the top when studying for a degree. Victoria Herishko highlights the promising students need the ability to communicate with people to persuade them. Being able to communicate and influence is the fundamental characteristic of a talented student in order to prove to their professors that they are capable of one day standing in front of a judge or a jury. If they cannot perform in the classroom, there is no way for them to perform in a tense courtroom. To be a prosperous lawyer, speaking and writing in a compelling way is crucial. Therefore, persuasiveness is one exceptionally desired trait in the field. Let's break these sentences down so that you can see the various components that we discussed in the previous slide. First, we see that the writer introduces the topic from the beginning. Learning to persuade a superior jury or judge skillfully is a significant quality of the lawyer. We see that the writer is saying that persuasiveness is what embodies a great candidate for a lawyer. Then we see that there's some We see that there's some transitional sentences where they give reasons as to why that lawyer needs to be persuasive. Then we see that research is used. We see the illustrations from Jude Daughtry, who talks about writing opinion briefs. And then what I really want you to know is directly after that quote is used, the author starts talking about why that research matters. It first discusses what an opinion brief is, and then it talks about why they need to be persuasive. So we see the direct connection between the research and the topic that they originally brought up. We also see that they use this really great transitional sentence to give us another reason. Additionally, being persuasive not only helps in a career, but a student too. And then they give more research to support that idea and support the thinking. Being able to communicate and influence is a fundamental characteristic of a talented student in order to prove to professors that they are capable of one day standing in front of a judge or a jury. Right there, we see that they are explaining the research once again. The thing that I want you to really know about this paragraph, this student did a really great job of, first of all, introducing the topic, and we see that this entire paragraph is completely about persuasiveness. We don't see any other character qualities brought into play. We don't see any new ideas come up towards the end. The entire thing is completely about being a persuasive lawyer. So we see the student really stay on topic. We also see that when they use research, they don't just leave the reader with the research and hope that they understand the connection between that and the topic. They do a great job of taking the time to explain why that particular research matters. And then at the end of the paragraph, we see them reiterate the idea of persuasiveness and summarize the entire paragraph. The next thing that we need to discuss is the conclusion. There are several components to a conclusion, and the main job is to summarize the main ideas and purpose of your essay. The reader should feel a sense of closure when they finish reading this paragraph. Keep in mind, this is not the place to introduce new concepts or ideas. So, for example, guys, in your own paper, this isn't the place where you throw in a new character quality in the last paragraph, or you start talking about another field for some reason. This is the place where you are simply summarizing and driving home what you've already said. A good conclusion should do a few things. It should restate your thesis, it should synthesize or summarize your main points, and it should make the context of your argument very clear. So let's talk about an ineffective conclusion. Here's an example from an essay. Pollution can kill fish and people. Drinking water becomes unsanitary and unsafe with pollution. If we do not fix the state of our freshwater system, our health can suffer. Researchers are still trying to help, but they have not resolved the issue of the water pollution. As citizens, it is our responsibility to help keep our waters clean and avoid polluting rivers, lakes, and oceans. When it is possible to tell from this conclusion, while it is possible to tell from this conclusion that the topic was over water pollution, there is no clear statement about the topic. Additionally, it's difficult to tell whether the first sentence is even a thesis statement. And then when you write your conclusion, you need to consider the type of conclusion you're writing and include each element that's appropriate for that conclusion type. By following each step, you can format and write an effective and impactful concluding paragraph for your research paper. This means you must consider the genre for the essay. Guys, what this means is as you're considering your prompt, as you're considering what type of paper you're writing, that's going to play into your conclusion. For you, the purpose of the essay is you are selling to me what creates the ideal candidate for your particular field. So your conclusion is really your last chance to sell that idea to me. It's to prove to me why a teacher needs to be patient more than they need to be analytical. It's to prove to me why a doctor needs to be more analytical than they need to be patient. This is your opportunity to drive home the message that you are trying to convey. Now let's look at an example of an effective conclusion. This contains the 5 elements summing up your research, and here is an example. Clean water is imperative to maintaining ecological balance and protecting the public's health. Very clearly, we see the thesis statement is right there at the beginning. The increase in water pollution since 2010 has contributed to the decrease in aquatic wildlife as well as the increase in unsafe drinking water. While the growth of sugar farming, more and more pollutants are entering our freshwater supplies. This increase in pollution has contributed to massive decreases in marine life, fish die-off, increased respiratory illness in neighborhood populations, and has contributed to the shortage of clean drinking water. Ecologists and marine biologists are continuing to measure the water quality, and researchers are continuing to find new ways to combat the pollution runoff from commercial farms. In the future, the EPA hopes this research will lead to a decrease in the pollutant concentration in our freshwater systems. If we cannot combat the ill effects that commercial farming has on our clean water, our freshwater ecosystems and drinking water supplies will surely diminish. More research and innovation are needed to maintain our clean water supply while still supporting the agricultural needs of the economy. Guys, what we see there is a very clear thesis statement. We know what this paper was about, and the student even reiterated the main ideas that they discussed throughout the research paper. And then finally, you have to document your sources. This is through your works cited page. Now, your works cited page is located at the end of your paper, and it should always be on a new page. It should not be right after the last sentence. It shouldn't be at the bottom of your last page. It should be on its own page at the end of your essay. Title it Works Cited. Even if there's only one source, which for you, that shouldn't be the case. You should have 6. However, even if it's for another class and you only use one, you still need to cite that source. Center the title at the topmost point of the page, and the works cited page uses the same formatting as the rest of the paper: 12-point standard font, double spacing, and 1-inch margin on all sides. List your sources alphabetically according to what comes first in each citation. Do not list them in the order that they occur in the paper. And this is the same for your annotated bibliography. Use hanging paragraphs to set up the sources. Basically, what we call these are hanging indentions. It means that the first line of each source begins all the way to the left, while the second and subsequent lines are indented by 1/2 of an inch, 1 tab. This is the reverse of what you're doing in your paragraphs for your essay. The hanging indent makes it easily to visually scroll down and see each source. If you're using Microsoft Word, you can set the hanging paragraphs by choosing hanging setting in the paragraphs menu. Now that we've covered the structure, I want to cover just a few things about the content, and we're going to dive into all of this a little bit more in depth next week. Make sure that when you are writing, you are only writing in third-person point of view. Eliminate I, me, myself, you, your, etc. The reason why we do this, guys, is because when you're convincing your audience of a certain idea, you want to appear unbiased. I'm going to give you a couple examples here. If I say, I think Black's Grill is the best burger joint in Cherville, versus Black's Grill is the best burger joint in Cherville because they have quality meat, really good setups to go with your burger, and the cheapest prices for the amount of food that you get. Which are you more likely to believe? You're more likely to believe that second sentence because it's not just my opinion. I'm phrasing it in a way that's not about me, and I'm phrasing it in a way where I'm giving you purpose as to why I think Black's Grill is the best. So when you're writing your sentences, ask yourself, how can I write this in a way that's believable? And that's in third-person point of view. Use collegiate diction and syntax. Remember, this is higher level writing. Your words should reflect collegiate standards and thinking. Avoid slang. Do not abbreviate, and avoid contractions. And what I mean by contractions is don't, can't, won't. Spell all of those words out. And spell out all numbers that are less than 100. Consider transition words and sentences. We talked a little bit about this in the body paragraph when we saw the student merging from one idea to the next, and they use words such as however, additionally, incongruence. Consider how the sentences flow together and read aloud to hear the issues reoccurring, such as repetitiveness, choppiness. Make sure that as you're reading it out loud, the flow sounds good. And then always, always, always read your work aloud and reference the list of errors and mistakes that we addressed earlier in the term. The more you practice editing and revising, the easier it's going to be to catch these simplistic mistakes. I hope this slideshow was really, really helpful. I linked this in the bottom of your lecture notes, and I'm actually going to show you where I did that so that you do not have to go searching for it. So as you can see in your week 4 folder, the lecture, once I complete it, is going to be right here. And then this PowerPoint that I went over is going to be linked right here. If after the lecture you just want to save this so you can refer back as you're writing, I think that would be a really great resource for you to have. And then I don't want you to forget that your short research outline assignment is due this week. Open the attachment and complete the instructions. It is important that you follow all directions. Your sentences need to be complete sentences so I can give you adequate feedback on word choices, diction, mechanics, etc. I want to see that you have adequately prepared to begin a great rough draft next week. So if you open this document, I'm going to let you guys read through this on your own as well. But basically, we're working on preparing your thesis and your outline for your short research essay. I've created a format that I want you to follow to ensure that you're including the important details for your outline. Remember, the more information that you include on your outline, the more helpful it's going to be when you're drafting your research essay. For specific definitions of the words below, this week's lecture will really guide you in that. It's important that you understand the terminology before beginning your assignment. First and foremost, remember that contingent on how many character qualities you are choosing, that's how many body paragraphs you will need to include. Some of you will have 3 body paragraphs, while others of you may have 6. And again, that's contingent on how many character qualities you're going to be diving into. In the sections that say Article 1 and 2, include the article title, as well as the page number, paragraph, or quote that you plan to use. Be as specific as you possibly can to ensure that you have enough information to solidify your argument. Remember, you can use different information in the same article. It does not have to be from 2 different articles. However, multiple sources indicating the same information only strengthens your point. Variation is key. What I mean by this is if you are talking about the word patience, if you have 2 different articles that reiterate that idea, it's more believable to the reader because that came from 2 peer-reviewed or secondary sources. Copy and paste the bottom portion of this handout and create the information that goes into each place. I'm looking for thoroughness, organization, and content that's ready to create a great rough draft. For the hook, thesis, topic, and summative sentence, please use a complete sentence, one that would be appropriate for an academic essay. In terms of the article information, please include which article you plan to use and or which page number. If you want to go ahead and list the quote that you want to use, that's even better. It only helps you as you go to do your rough draft. But the requirement for this homework assignment is the article title and the page number. I want to see that you have adequate information to support your ideas. If you are using a non-peer-reviewed source, which you are allowed to use 2 of those, and it doesn't have a page number, that's fine. Just include the article title. And then this is what I want you to copy and paste. And as you can see, I'm looking for your hook, your thesis statement, topic sentences, the article information, summative sentences. And then again on your conclusion, when I put hook down here, I want to see you re-grab your reader's attention and then restating that thesis statement once more. And again, contingent on how many character qualities you have, that's how many body paragraphs you're going to have. And then this particular assignment is going to be due on the 28th at 11:59 p.m. If you have any questions about anything that we've covered in this lecture, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to set up a Zoom conference with any of you or really help you apply some of those concepts that we're talking about to your outline if you need a little bit of additional help. And then just keep in mind, please look at the course schedule so that you can stay on track for the rough draft portions that are due next week. Next week, you're going to have your introduction, at least one body paragraph, and a conclusion that's due. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I look forward to seeing you again next week. Bye-bye.